Take 20 though. We'll want him to take 20. And then we'll do open sharing for the rest of the meeting, right? So 45 minutes open sharing. Is that good? Are we going to talk about going through there's a solution and whatnot, or not yet?
No, if you want me to, but I would just get started.
Okay, let's get started. I'm going to do the set-aside prayer. You guys, the set-aside prayer is going to be in your Big Book Awakenings. It is, each section of the Big Book Awakening is going to have a set-aside prayer for it. So when we're in the beginning, it has a specific one. Then when we get to the physical craving, it's going to be on the physical craving, the mental obsession, spiritual malady, whatnot. All right? So I'm going to open with this set-aside prayer. It says, God, please enable me to set aside everything I think I know for an open mind and a new experience. Help me see the truth about this book, the meetings, the 12 steps, and my disease. Awesome. And we're going to do a meditation.
There's seats in the front.
There's also some seats up here if anyone's looking for a seat. I'm Joe. I'm a crystal meth addict and alcoholic.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, everyone. Does anyone have any questions about the assignment really fast? I just wanted to see if everyone had any questions that we could answer really fast. No? And when you meet with your step partner, I don't know if it was clear last week, but when I meet with my step partner, we are reading the big book together. We read the pages, and then we answer the questions together. I don't know if that was clear. So we're actually reading the assignment. So we're reading the book together. Okay? And if you're still looking for a step partner, or still can take someone through, there's a sign-up sheet in the back over here by the water on the table where there's supposed to be snacks, but no one brought any. A little passive aggressiveness. There's a sign-up sheet over there, so just sign up if you're still looking for a step partner, or if you can take someone through the work, if you've done the work, okay? And it'll say what your disease is and whatnot. So today we are going to go over circle, triangle, preface, and forwards. And like you all know, I shared last week, I was in and out of the rooms for a long time. And I know what it's like to be miserable in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and sitting in the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous thinking I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm really not, But I heard a lot of things when I was here about staying sober. I heard, just don't drink no matter what. Keep going to meetings and just don't drink no matter what, which is ridiculous. If I could just not drink no matter what, I wouldn't be here, It's like, are you kidding me? I think I tried that. Don't think I'm an idiot, And the people who wrote this book and the people in the big book were not stupid people. They were very intelligent men, and they couldn't get this thing either. So to tell a newcomer, oh, just don't drink, just call your sponsor, it's like, slap in the face to me. So I would hear these things, and I'd hear, get a sponsor, work the steps, get a big book, and go to meetings. These are the four things. And I'd go to meetings, and I'd drink after the meetings, or I'd use after the meetings. I would. That's the way I did. And I went to 90 meetings in 90 days, and I saw lots of other people who would go to lots of meetings and drink or use. I also had a sponsor. I actually lived with 2 sponsors, and I smoked meth in both of their houses. Yep, that was it. So that didn't work. Yeah, just a little. He locked me out. He locked me out. I'm like, what kind of service is this? Motherfucker. Excuse my language. You said you'd be there for me. We read the book together. I read Bill's story like crazy because he kept starting me over because I kept relapsing, But I would be reading the big book. That didn't keep me sober. And I'd go to meetings, work the steps, had a sponsor. None of it worked for me, And so I was very confused because this is the message I would hear. And I'd watch people in the rooms next to me. I'd watch people who was my sponsee brother or my sponsee sister, and they had the same sponsor as me, and they would get well, and I seemed to be getting worse. And we were doing the same thing. And so to me, my experience it's been different for me. And a lot of people, I think, including myself, when I got here, I didn't really know what was wrong with me. I had no idea that this was a disease of mind, body, and spirit. I had no idea what it was, what the Alcoholics Anonymous program was. I thought it was just going to meetings and thinking it through and trying to stay sober, and that I couldn't do. And a lot of people can do that. A lot of people can stay sober just on meetings alone. A lot of people don't even need to go to meetings. They work the steps once, and then you see them maybe every year, and they take a token, and you never see them again. It's true. It's the way it is. Some people go to treatment, they get what they need, they spin dry, and they get out. It's a spin dry, yeah. And they're fine, and they could go back and they could run their life. And I'm not any of those people. Okay? And I found that I was different than the people in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, at least in the people that in the meetings I would go to. My sponsor would pick me up. I go to Drunks Only every day. Drunks Only noon meeting every day. And I'd get back and go to work, and I couldn't stay sober. And then lost my job, lost everything, over and over again. Over and over again. Okay? So until I was exposed to the big book Awakenings, and the big book This Way, I had no idea what the program was about. So here I go to this big book Awakening stuff. And I open this book and I start seeing the circle and triangle, and it's laid out for me. And I had a sponsor that laid it out for me as well. And he said, there's 3 parts to this program. All right? There's a unity part. Where are you at in unity? He asked me. What is unity? All right? It's the meetings. It's the coffee commitment. It's cleaning ashtrays. The meeting before the meeting after the meeting. Being part of the fellowship. This is the unity part of the program. And where are you at in your meetings? Okay, I'm going to 4 meetings a day. Or 4 meetings a week. Sometimes 4 meetings a day, depending on my sobriety. You know what I mean? There's some days I wasn't working, I wasn't doing anything. Let's go to a meeting. We're going to another meeting. We're going to another meeting. I did 3 meetings today. I was so burnt out on meetings, you guys. I was dying in meetings. You know what I mean? It was like, oh my God, sometimes I'd leave a meeting and then you go to another meeting because that meeting was just... You hear the stories in these meetings and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to slit my wrists. Jesus Christ, someone's sharing about their cat, right? Their cat, their washing machine. Oh, my tire blew on the freeway, and if it wasn't for this program, I'd have drank. Oh my God. I'm about to drink right now. And I did. Right? It's so true. So where am I in the unity portion? And am I committed to the group? Do I have a group that I'm committed to? This is one part of a 3-part program. Now, the recovery part, right? Where am I at in steps? Have I done the steps? And right now, where we're at in the steps is we're like at step 0 right now because we're still looking at them. We're not even in the first step yet. I mean, it's all part of it, but... so as of right now, I'm really haven't worked the steps. I had never worked the steps. And if I had worked the steps, where am I at with 10 and 11? Do I have any unfinished amends? These are the questions. And for me, being new... When he was talking to me, I had never done the steps all the way. Steps 1 through 9. 10 and 11 and 12. Never sponsored. Okay? So I had never worked the steps. And he says, and the third part, is the spiritual, the service, is taking other people through the work. Right? And I'd never gotten that far. I'd never done enough step work to get to take someone through the work. So here I am expecting the results of a 3-part program, living in one part. Living in the meetings. And the only requirement for me to be in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, the book tells me, is a desire, an honest desire to stop drinking, right? That's all I need to occupy a seat in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he turned me to page 24, and he said, on the top of 24, it showed me that the most powerful desire is of absolutely no avail, that for me to stay sober for good. All right. So it dawned on me that the only requirement to be a member has not, never will be, the only requirement for me to stay sober for good. All right? There's a difference between being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and being in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And here I am sitting in the rooms of the meetings of AA, thinking I'm in AA, and I'm not in AA. I'm just a visitor, and I'm sitting in the meetings. I'm occasionally reading the book. I've never worked the steps, and I'm out of my fucking mind. Excuse my language.
I like your language.
You know? And so this little circle and triangle, you know, opened up the program to me. And it's like, well, if this is AA, then where am I at in AA? Am I even in the program? And Tyla shared last week, she looks at this every week. And I look at it all the time too. It's like, where am I at right now in Alcoholics Anonymous? Am I still in Alcoholics Anonymous? And he pointed out to me that's an equilateral triangle. So am I in service? Am I not doing service? You know, I hear all these people say, I'm a grateful recovering addict. Well, how many sponsees do you have? Are you really grateful? Because I think that when someone says that they're grateful recovering addict, that they're giving back in the way of sponsorship to me. And coffee commitment, literature, that's great. But if you've been through the work and you're not sponsoring, what the fuck? You know, what's going on? Sounds selfish to me. Yeah, I know a couple of you. I know you. Because I took you through the work and I know you're not sponsoring. It's true. Three-part program.
That's so funny. I love you,
So now, let's see.
How many meetings do I have to go to? I'm new. How many meetings do I have to go to?
Some people say a meeting a day. I had been in and out of the program so many times, I went to 3-4 meetings a week. So I had 4 meetings that I went to a week, and I was committed to one meeting, and I was always in that meeting. It was the Big Book Awakening meeting. It was the Wednesday night meeting. I was always there. And I would help set down, and I was a part of that meeting. And then I would make it to 2 or 3 others. And then my meetings would drop down a little bit as I started sponsoring more. So, because it's an equilateral triangle, you see. So I'm doing the steps, I'm going to meetings, and I'm starting to work with others. And the time just shows up, you know what I mean? And here I am now sober in all 3 parts. And the confusing part was I've done each of these things individually and none of them kept me sober. See, I don't do these things to keep myself sober. But they told me that if you don't go to meetings, if you don't get a book and have a sponsor to take you through this and work the steps and work with others, you probably aren't going to find a power that's going to keep you sober. And that made sense to me. That I don't do these things to keep myself sober. And that's a lie that comes to me all the time, that I'm keeping myself sober. The delusion that I'm like other people has to be smashing, this continues to come up to me and come into my life, that I'm keeping myself sober by the amount of meetings I go to, or how many sponsees I have, or how many times I'm doing the work, or I'm writing inventory 15 times a day. You know what I mean? Like this relying on inventory, and I'm fixing myself and whatnot, and I'm keeping myself sober, and it's a lie. That I do these things to take me to a power that keeps me sober, and there's a difference there, because I'm not that power, okay? I had to really understand that. Now, then they told me that there is a part of the program for each part of my disease. And the message that I was hearing of just don't drink no matter what, it's an accurate message. And it's the message to my body. If I never put alcohol in my body, or drugs in my body, I will never experience the physical craving, right? I will never experience it. So the message to the body is, don't drink no matter what. Although I can't do that, you know. I get that. Because the message to my mind, where I take my body is I take my body to the meetings, okay? And they say, where you take the body, the mind will follow. I take the mind through the steps, all right? And then I take my sickened emotions and sickened spirit to be of service to other people, all right? So there's 3 parts. There's 3 parts of this disease. Awakened spirit to be of service to other people. There's a sickened emotion, yeah, a sickened spirit. Sometimes a sickened spirit. Hopefully it's not still. But there's 3 parts of this program, and there's 3 parts to my disease, mind, body, spirit. And I had no idea there's 3 parts of my disease. I'd never heard about the spiritual malady. I had never heard about the spiritual malady. I heard about a disease of the mind and the body, and that was it. I had no idea why I was writing inventory. I had no idea that I was supposed to I knew that there's this thing about God I had to do, but I didn't know why. I didn't connect the dots to me. You know what I mean? And the way they laid out this circle and the triangle, it connected it. It made sense to me. It's like, this is what's missing. It's so easy. This is the program. I have my disease. This is my program. These are all the parts for each part of my disease. And the circle is together as one. And so the promise here, the first promise in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is on this title page with the circle and triangle. And it says, if I came in here and I knew I was an alcoholic or a drug addict, and the first page says a promise, it says, how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism? That's a promise, all right? They tell me on the very first page I can recover. And this circle and the triangle together as one, meaning my body, my mind, and my spirit can be together whole, right? You're going to talk about that. Whole, all right? And what I've been living in is I've been living in the cravings of the body. I've been living in the obsessions of the mind. And I've been living in sickened emotions from a sickened spirit. And sometimes I've had freedom from the craving because I had gone on a run and I'm done. It's off of me. The beast is off of me for a day or two, and I'm not craving. And sometimes I've, cleaned up a little bit in treatment or whatnot, and the obsession's off of me. It's off of my back. But I've never been in a place where I've not been plagued by sickened emotions coming from a sickened spirit. That has always been there. And they say you could put a dot in the center of that circle and triangle. And that my mind and my body and my spirit can be one. And that, I believe, is the fourth dimension of existence. Because I've been living in these three dimensions my whole life. And here they're saying that there can be a fourth dimension, free from the obsessions, free from the craving, and free from those sickened emotions from a sickened spirit. And that's a promise to someone like me who can't change. And I've been looking for change my whole life. I've been trying to change myself. I've been trying to change everyone else. And even sober, I've been trying to change, and I can't. You know what I mean? It's been beyond me. And I think I can do it for a while, and I think I can get there, but I just couldn't get far enough, And I needed something drastic to happen in my life, and they're telling me right here that it can. That's what I have to share on the circle and triangle. And I'm going to open it up to Tyla to share her experience with this part of the book.
Joe, do I need this?
No.
I don't know. Let me make sure Hi, I'm Tyla, and I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I want to say welcome to all the people that are here. There's some people here that weren't here last week, and welcome. And if you don't have a step partner or you need one, please stay after the meeting and let us help you get connected. And if you can take one, please stay after the meeting and let us help you. That was just great, Joe. And my story is a lot similar to Joe's. I was, my sobriety date is December 26, 1989, and I didn't find this program in the Big Book. Whether I used the Big Book Awakening or not, I really had the program out of the Big Book for many years in my sobriety when I was working with my sponsor in San Bernardino. But the thing I never heard that you do the steps more than once. I never heard that until I heard Dan and Mark and Dave and these guys that came out of the lineage of Denver, that they all did it. And it was just astounding to me. And, I would think you just do the steps and you live in 10 and 11 and 12, right? And when you're in enough pain, you go back and do another 4-step inventory and you're good. I just, and if you would have said to me before I got the Big Book Awakening, if you would have said, a lot of the difficulties in your life are because you haven't done a first step in a long time. When I first worked with Mark, that was one of the first things he said to me. He said, your first step is a distant memory. And that is the truth. And one of the things is it seems to me sometimes, if I can't figure it out in my head, if my head doesn't tell me certain things, I don't want to do it. And there's things on this journey that are a mystery. And I have to accept the mystery part of this journey in the 12 steps. But I'm going to tell you, because I've done the work since the BBA probably 12 or 13 times. And I do the work because, I do the work because I do the work. I don't always have to have a reason to do the work. I do it because I know at the end of the work, my life is going to be better or different. I never know. You never know what God's going to do. And so sometimes when someone would say, you know, you're having trouble because you're, like Mark did, your first step experience was 12 years ago, and you're living on a distant memory of it. But my head would say, that's ridiculous. Why would I need to do that again? And so that's why that set-aside prayer is so important, that I have to set aside everything I think I know for an open mind and a new experience. Because I can tell you, I always don't understand it when I'm going through the work and doing another first step. But my life is infinitely changed because I have seen that everything that I do or won't do in this program is based on my experience with the first step. That I forgot. I forgot that I'm an alcoholic and drug addict, and for me, it's life or death. Because it's really not that big of a deal, and I'll just do a little coda and a little Al-Anon, and I'll just go to a different church or get a new relationship. And you know what? That step 0 that we talked about last week, you can be on step 0 with 10 years in this program. You can get back there. And you may not drink or use, but you'll live like you want to. And that's how I was at 12 years when I wanted to kill myself before Mark brought me this message. You know, I was so untreated. And so when I saw that circle and triangle, I had never seen the circle and triangle. I was 12 years sober, and I had never, I'm sure I saw it once, but it wasn't in the book anymore because they had a problem with the copyright. Dave's going to share, and he can probably tell you exactly, but they had a problem with the copyright, so they gave it up because they didn't want to fight it, right, Dave? Something like that? Oh, you'll tell us. Dave knows all that. Dave is one of my go-to guys because he knows a lot more about this than I do. Are we taping this? Whose phone is that? Okay, awesome. You know, I'm thinking, what's my phone doing up here? Really? So I look at that circle and triangle, and when I was 12 years sober and looked at the circle and the triangle, okay, I would tell you that I was well in the fellowship side and well in the service side. But I was not in the recovery side in the way that, and you notice the recovery side is the bottom. It's the foundation of that triangle. So it's really, and for me, I'm a person that loves meetings, you know, and meetings really, I mean, I think I stayed sober for a long time. I did the step work another way, and it was good. It never got to the root of my problem. The way I did the work never touched the spiritual malady, never touched the spiritual root, and I was still living in sickened emotions that were coming from a sickened spirit, and I didn't even know it. And it isn't logical, and so I have to just set it aside what I think that must be. Why can't I think that spiritual sickness through and be okay? Because I couldn't. I had to have experience with it and not knowledge. And I didn't even understand it when Mark came to me and gave me this work. I had no idea what the spiritual malady is. I never heard of it in my life, just like you said. I never heard of it. So when I look at the fellowship side, you know, most of you go to Big Book Awakening, you know, and I look at the gift of having a meeting that is so directed to recovery and has a directed format, right? And a directed format means you can only share, you know how it is at Big Book Awakening, you can only share the solution out of the Big Book on the topic. And so when I was bitching at Mark about how bad the meetings were after I'd done the work with him, and he said, I called him, I said, oh, these meetings, blah, 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 they're terrible, and I'm not hearing the message. And he just was like, get off your ass and go create the fellowship you crave. And that's what it says in the book. And I say that to you. You know what? We need more good meetings. We need more directed meetings towards the book, like directed formats like we have. And if you don't hesitate to start a meeting that speaks to you. Because I hear people come and complain to me about the meetings, and I said, go out and start one. You know, and we need it. So I look at the fellowship side, you know, and I went to 2 meetings a day for 3 years. And for whatever reason, you know, there is power in the fellowship, but is there enough power in the fellowship for a spiritual experience? And I don't think so. And that's what I was suffering from. I had not had a psychic change. I had not had a deep and effective spiritual experience. Well, you were sober. I was sober, but I had had a spiritual experience behind a suicide attempt, doing prostitution and smoking crack and drinking vodka in a motel in Pomona, right? So I did have that, and that did keep me sober, but the thing I needed deep inside didn't happen. So I look at the fellowship for me, and do I have a commitment at a meeting? And if you're sponsored by me, you better have a commitment at a meeting. And do I go early and do I stay late? I think that's really important to welcome people and be a part of the group, to get involved. And having a commitment at the fellowship, like I said, is really important. So this is me at 12 years. So I was great in the fellowship, and the recovery side, nothing. Where am I today in the recovery side? I do the steps right now about every 2 years. I was doing it more often. This has been about 2 years or a year and a half that I've done the steps. And I practiced 10, 11, and 12. And I finished all of my amends that I'm consciously aware of. And so that's where I'm in the recovery side. And then the spiritual side, when I was 12 years sober, I had done Vista Jail for 10 years. I'd done county detox for 10 years. And, I believe that had a lot to do with me staying sober. You need all three parts, but that being of service really did a lot for my recovery. I didn't get everything I needed, but it really helped me, and it helped me get out of the selfishness, because I believe that, alcoholism is selfishness, self-centeredness, dishonesty, and fear. And that's what the Oxford group would say in the beginning. So I want to go look at the preface. Well, the table of contents, a lot of you guys already know, but the table of contents, I did not know in the table of contents that the spiritual malady was on 44, 45, and 52. I never knew, because I didn't even know what it was, And we're going to look at the physical craving from the doctor's opinion up to the top of 23. Okay, we're going to look at the mental obsession from 23 to 43, and we're going to look at spiritual malady from 44, 45, and 52. Okay, then it's clear in those table of contents, we agnostics, step 2, right? And then it's clear on all the other steps from then on. But those early steps were confusing. I didn't exactly know how it was broken up, okay? Let's go over to the preface. I'm not going to read all the preface and the forewords. You're certainly welcome to when you take people through, but I usually don't. It says this book is a book designed to transmit experience. That comes from Joe and Charlie. It's more than it says it's designed to transmit experience, sufficient enough to enable us to recover. Am I recovered or am I recovering? Have I recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body? Yes, I did, even at 12 years, but I had not been recovered spiritually. Okay. And I think some people that I know say if you're recovering, you're probably not. Because it says on the preface, the second paragraph, because this book has become the basic text for our society and has helped such large numbers of alcoholic men and women to recover, there exists a strong sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. Therefore, the first portion of this volume describing the Aaa program has been left untouched. That lets me know that they have changed the stories in the back, which is sad, because I love the stories in the first edition, the original stories, but they have not changed anything in the first 164 pages except to take the doctor's opinion out of page 1 and put it into the prefaces. The section called the doctor's opinion has been kept intact just as it was originally in 1939 by the Dr. William D. Silkworth. So it tells me there this is a basic text. And a textbook, unlike a novel, is meant to be studied. So it tells me that this is a book that I can study, and it will be important to me to study it, and I have studied it a lot, and I'm certainly not an expert on it. But a textbook is a book that each chapter builds on the next, like addition, then subtraction, multiplication, and division. And each chapter builds on the next chapter, okay? So let's go over to the foreword to the first edition. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. There's my definition of my alcoholism and addiction, seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics and addicts precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic and addict. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person, and I say to myself, do I comprehend it? And besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. And in some of the history stuff that I read, it says it's our way of living. It doesn't say it's our way to quit drinking or using or eating or whatever the addiction is. It says so the way I live, alcohol and drugs, once I'm recovered, is not a problem, right? It's just the way I live. It's just the way I live will take me back to picking up, but I always think alcohol and drugs are a problem. I don't think that they're a problem now, but I don't also say now I have a living problem. I think that's a very confusing message to me for the new person. Oh, don't worry, alcohol is just your solution. You just really have a living problem. Really? So I think it's both. Does that make sense to you guys? So, and it says our way of living has its advantages for all. And a lot of things, you know, a lot of people other than alcoholics and addicts use this book, and it has its advantages. Because to me, the way these steps are, they have given me a way of life, a life worth living. I never knew how to do life, nothing. I mean, I was, when I got here, I couldn't do anything. And this book taught me a way to live and took me to that power that I needed in my life. On the back side of Foreword to the first edition, I'm sorry, you guys. I want to go back to the preface on page XII, right opposite the Foreword to the first edition. On the bottom paragraph, it says, all changes made over the years in the big book, the nickname for Alcoholics Anonymous book, have had the same purpose to represent the current membership of Alcoholics Anonymous more accurately and thereby to reach more alcoholics. If you have a drinking or drug problem, we hope that you may pause in reading one of the 42 personal stories and think, yes, that happened to me, or more important, yes, I felt like that, or more important, yes, I believe this program can work for me too. And I think that question needs to be answered somewhere in the first two steps when I'm working with someone. Yes, do you believe this program can work for you? You know, I believe the program can work for me because I've done it, but as a new person, it's important that you believe that. That's why I told you last week about making a commitment to the workshop, just not to come in kind of, you know, because alcoholics and addicts are not good at making commitments. And they're worse at keeping them. So, put it in the first column, right? So, Dave's laughing. Because I might have offended someone. You know, sometimes I can do that. So, you know, I would love, you know, I'm going to have Dave come up if he would and share on Silkworth and Dr. Bob meeting. Would you do that, Dave? You don't have a choice. You know,
haven't been introduced.
What? You're getting away from what? What's God's influence? Oh, I'm sorry. God's telling me to tell you what to do. Would you? Would you come up and share? Thank you. Okay. That's why I love you. You always pull my covers.
I'm surprised there's not assigned seating.
There is. You just didn't see it.
Name tags.
It's 50-50.
Tell him I said there is.
Is it by alphabet or is it chronological alphabetical? How's the seating? Priority. Newcomers in the front, old timers in the back.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Dave Marquez. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Hi, Dave.
My God-given sobriety date is May 9th, 1993. I wasn't sure if I was going to get down here, so I'm here. I'm not going to bore you with qualifying for being an alcoholic or not. Why in the hell else would I be here on a Sunday afternoon and 3 hours away with about 10,000 other things to do in San Diego, you know? So that should qualify right there. Just for this. So, how many people are doing this for the very, very first time? The steps out of the book, the very first time. This is the first time you're seeing it. Okay, you guys should be in front.
They need to be in the front. Did you say
They
that?
should be in front.
I told him that. You guys
Should never take a cheap seat in Alcoholics Anonymous. You should never take a cheap seat to God in your recovery. I was a kid that was in the back of the class all the time. The teachers would always move you up front, right? So you pay attention. How many people are got some years from doing it the last time, or had a relapse? Have some years. Either way. Okay. How many people are on the heels of just having done it within the last couple months? for something different?
We want to take people through.
I mean, other than to help some for
Yeah.
your own step work
They want to take.
on the heels of just having done it. Okay, I was just curious. So when I look at the front of the book, when I was new, I came into a group. Actually, a group of guys. I wasn't even part of the group yet, and they took me to coffee shops because I had a hard time with a lot of things that Josie already talked about in my early recovery in AA, and just going to meetings. And so they say, hey, why don't you come meet us at the coffee shop? And they'd have books out, and they would say, what'd you hear? Not who said it. What'd you hear? This is what I heard. Well, let's look at what the book says. I mean, it was a 2-hour thing. We go to another meeting, we go to another coffee shop, we do it again. And then there would be, like once a week, we'd have this little powwow at Will Warner's house out in Pearl City. And it'd be a Friday or Saturday night, and there'd be 10, 12, 15 of us all in the living room just sitting around talking about the newest person in the room, and that was always me, and in light of the book, and getting condemned, judged, and getting a dose of AA, spiritual enema. AA. And so I was aware of what I was finally brought to what the truth was. I just didn't know I needed to participate in the truth of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I knew that, I already knew from the onset, going to meetings for the first time, the first few weeks, that hearing all that nonsense that you hear, you think this can't be it. People can't be hanging around here for 20, 30 years listening to war stories and pissing contests and whining and sniveling about how life sucks, even though they're not drinking for 20 years later. I couldn't bring myself to believe that this is what it was about, you know. And if it was about that, then I was done. I would go back to the Mormon church and roll the dice with them, you know. They don't drink either, you know. At least they baptize you there, you know. So send you on a mission and carry a message, you know. So, but to me, the statement, the first promise of the book in the title page, that how many thousand men and women recover from alcoholism, is very important. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the people that talk about they're always going to be recovering, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that. You may be. But I'm here to tell you, and I'm not telling you because I'm saying it, I'm telling you because the book says it, but you can go to another place with it. You can become recovered, is what our book says. You don't have to always be recovering, okay? To stay in a place where you have to continue to tell yourself that you're sick in order that you have motivation to get well is propping up a mental defense that you really don't have, okay? It's really blowing smoke up your own ass, okay? So I've been in, this is just recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, where people with a lot of time sober, not in big book meetings necessarily, but we'll be reading from the book, and they'll come across a passage like that, or in the first edition about recovered, and they'll say things like, they'll sit there whispering under their breath like, man, I've been here 20, when did AA start putting recovered in our program, you know? It's like, they've never seen it, right? And they think like all of a sudden AA is off the page, right? They don't know it's been there from the beginning. And so what is alcoholism and what's being recovered? We always talk about recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. And while you may not feel recovered when you've stopped drinking, and if you realize you're a real alcoholic and you've stopped drinking, that really is probably about a higher power and not you, something's happened there that has made that possible to do for you what you can't do for yourself. And if you've had dry time beyond the process the body takes to disseminate alcohol out of your system, and you haven't drank, and you're sitting in a place like this, or even the meetings that aren't like this, you are demonstrating a hope for something different and hope for something better. It may not feel like it, it might suck, but you're demonstrating a consciousness of a hope, being recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. Okay? recover from the alcoholism is another place, right? That's the spiritual sickness. And even people that I'm close to will pull up short on that. They're not willing to admit that we can become recovered spiritually, but it's part of our process. It tells us right in the fourth step, the primer to the fourth step, it talks about straightening out spiritually and then we straighten out mentally and physically. Mm-hmm. And I have not yet seen the book make a claim that hasn't come true. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, but you don't know until you get in there and do it yourself. Right? So what is that? Alcoholism is what I'm left with when the alcohol's gone. Right? And that's that 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. It's the life that's rooted in selfishness and self-centeredness, the terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair, and everything else that goes underneath all that, right? So what is so that is my spiritual malady, right? And that spiritual malady, to take a term from Christian literature, is legion, right? It comes in so many different forms and so many different masses that we can never hope to keep up with it. I mean, if there's a power greater than myself that restores me to sanity, then I must need that because there's a power greater than myself that restores me to insanity, right? So recover from my alcoholism is to be recovered spiritually, to maybe have a life that's rooted in being God-centered and selfless, to have a life that is guided by, driven by, not fear, right, but courage and faith, right? Because that's what we find out about the fourth step, right? That faith is the counterbalance to the fear, right? And all men of faith have courage. So maybe it's a life that's driven by courage and faith. Truth rather than self-delusion. Happy, joyous, and free rather than self-pity, right? God-seeking rather than self-seeking. And then and we still have an 11th step, right? We still have an 11th step, so for when we fall short. Just because we fall short doesn't mean that we haven't recovered spiritually. That's part of the process, right? That's part of continuing to grow on a spiritual basis of life that goes from the inside out. Making those mistakes and turning ourselves back into God on a daily basis and saying, what's your will? No matter how much I fail or I think I fail, what's your will? Also, in seeing the grace, because I don't know how much it takes to block me off from the sunlight of the Spirit. A little bit of lying, a little bit of resentment, a little bit of nasty sex conduct. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea how much of the defects of character it takes to block me on the sunlight of the Spirit. I drink under all conditions, good, bad, or indifferent. Not a cloud on the horizon. Okay? So for me to be walking around and do a 10th or 11th step and say, oh, yeah, answering yes to all those questions, and then just still say, look in the mirror and go, I'm still sober, and that's something in the way of me doing what God wanted me to do today, is having some hindsight in the grace throughout the day, right, that just passed. So it's this promise is really about setting me up to realize, if I have a good sponsor who's going to point this out, that in order to recover from alcoholism, I do need a higher power, right? And then that, which you guys already eloquently described as the circle and the triangle, I'm not going to add on to that. You guys did a great job. But all I would say is that it is an equilateral triangle, but let God build your equilateral triangle. Don't self-will it, right? I know people that have, like, because it's three triangles, it's three sides, right? And like they do 2 days of their own step work, and they have 2 days of meetings, and then they have 2 days of service, working with somebody else or whatever, and then 1 day of, like, I guess fuck it, I don't know, right? Let's go out and deliberately manufacture some misery today. It's my free day, Let the spiritual malady live, I don't know. Does that sound like an exciting life in sobriety to be regimented like that? Oh, good Lord. It wasn't even that bad in the Marine Corps. And you'll have people come up, you're in a bag of shit, right? And you were dumb enough to actually throw that out on the table, and then you'll have the then you'll have the 911 after the meeting and people want to give you advice, hysterical advice. And
Run for the hills.
right? And then somebody in that hysterical advice will say, Tyler, you just need some balance.
Fuck you.
Yeah, fuck you and your balance, right? You know what? What looks like out of balance to you may not be what God wants me to have in balance. The point I need to see is that, like if you think of the fulcrum, right, and the teeter-totter, I'm not the fulcrum. God's the fulcrum, okay? I'm on one side, and all my affairs are on this side that God gives me, right? And whatever that looks like to me or to you really doesn't mean much, right? It may look like a ton of shit or nothing to you, right? It may look like it's out of balance to you. But if you know that you're trusting God to move you around that triangle, the way He wants you to be moved around that triangle, and whether that means that you're heavy on your own step work and pulling up short on sponsoring people or whatever that might look like, you just trust that. You just trust that, you know? That's all I would... Why we lost it, you know, I spent 9, 10, 11 years in general service. You spend one term as a GSR and you'll find out why we lose shit like that, okay? You know, couple of things about the preface that is really important to me. Tyler mentioned one of them was the textbook, mentioning that it's a textbook. But also in there, on the second paragraph, there's a phrase in there that describes the book as the Aaa Recovery Program. This is the Aaa Recovery Program. There is no other piece of AA published literature that makes that claim. Has that not the 12 and 12, not Living Sober, not is AA for you, is AA for me pamphlet, right? Not this is AA pamphlet, right? Which if you ever read that piece of shit, if you ever read that toilet paper, right? You won't ever find anything about a message in there, okay? So, but my point is that it says this is the AA Recovery Program. Nowhere else can it be found. So if you're new and doing this for the first time, you need to know that. You really need to know that. Before you go get frustrated with this process, because the spiritual malady will try and break you from making this commitment to seek a spiritual awakening. Trust me on that, okay? Mm-hmm. Every single time I make this move towards God to get a better relationship with God in any capacity, there's a spiritual malady trying to knock me off that path. So you need to know that you're in the right place, that God has brought you here to the truth about Alcoholics Anonymous, and that this is the AA Recovery Program. You need to know that, okay? And the other thing about the preface is, and I'm going to take this another step further with what Tyla mentioned at the bottom about how to read the book, okay? If you ask people in your regular meetings that you go to, they say, oh yeah, I've read the book, or I read the book. Oh great, well did you do what it said when you read it? And then you'll get this deer in the headlights look. They don't know what you're talking about. Do you know how to read the book? Just read it like a novel, right? That's how it's described, the story of. So, and then that's a much different set of questions, right? And then when you get to this third question about, do I believe this program could work for me too? That's where you can really bear down on yourself, bear down on the people you work with. What's that have to do with, right? There's musts. If I do what the book tells me I must do, have to do, had to do, required, what's necessary, all these sorts of very strong directives that is comprised in our program. Am I willing to do that? Am I willing to make the prayers? Am I willing to do the writing as it's described? Am I willing to go out and talk to these people about this stuff in this way? Am I willing to seek God in this way, right? And just do what was laid out by the people that have already done it. Do I believe that will work for me too? So there's a lot of that. Then you got those guiding principles in there that you really got to pay attention to. Like, we think this and we hope that, or we feel this and we feel that. And turn those statements into, do I feel that way? Do I understand that? And just because I don't understand it or I don't think it doesn't give me license to just blow it off. Take it to my sponsor. Man, but my sponsor might not know, right? Take it to my conscience. What's the truth? Well, AA folks think this about this. Where am I with it? Well, I don't think that. Don't just blow it off like maybe that's not my experience or that's not important. And that might be something that is very important. Okay? And what Joe C said is so critical. Have this book. This is the primary book. Your BBAs are the supplement.
Mm-hmm.
Dan is very thorough in the BBA, but he didn't catch every statement and turn every statement into a question. Okay? That's your job, right? You got to kind of fill in the holes, right? Don't rely on what Dan wrote specifically or exactly. There's a lot of, in several chapters, a lot of stuff, you don't know what's important for what God wants you to see. And if you don't get in the big book and use that along with the BBA guides, you may miss something that God wants you to see. Because after all, what you're really trying to do is the AA program, right? Mm-hmm. And you got this great supplement that helps with that. But don't disregard what's in here. Don't start using that as the primary. So what? Am I going long? Am I done?
You're fine. No, do you want to share on the foreword to the second edition, Dr. Bob and
Sure.
and Silky, not Dr. Bob and Bill W. meeting?
Yeah. Okay.
I'd love to hear you sharing that.
So you all know, you guys, I'm not going to assume that there's people that are new here, so I'm not going to assume that. Bill Wilson is the first AA character that we know about, and he got with Dr. Silkworth, who wrote the doctor's opinion, and he is the one that presented the hopelessness of alcoholism from a clinical perspective to Bill. So Bill had a dose of the problem to the point where it convinced him that he needed a spiritual solution, and that's when he started attending Oxford group meetings. He couldn't stay sober, but he started attending Oxford group meetings. He'd been attending Oxford group for about 6 months, and finally he gets into the hospital. He has his experience, and I maybe have this out of order, but nonetheless, then Eddie calls him, who was his best drinking buddy from the past, and he had already been a Oxford group member sober for 2 months. Okay, and so Bill already had the hopelessness of alcoholism and what Dr. Silkworth had described, but he didn't necessarily have the solution. And here comes Ebby, that could speak Bill's language, the alcoholic language, and explain to him, I've got religion, right? I have this practical program of action that I found out about at the Oxford groups. And it was this catalyst of equal parts problem and equal parts solution with another person, which usually God's involved in between. Whether you believe it or not, God has no problem being anonymous, just in case you guys are atheist or agnostic. Okay, he doesn't need the credit. So it was that catalyst, right, that drove Bill to have the willingness to do the action that he describes later on in his story. So then he goes off for a business trip to Akron. He gets in a shitstorm because he's in a bunch of fear because his business deal doesn't go the way he wants it to go, and so he goes into what do I do mode, and he starts making some phone calls, and he's led to Dr. Bob. And now Dr. Bob was heavily educated in Christian practices, raised in it all his life, and Dr. Bob had already been going to the Oxford group for about 2.5 years, but he didn't know about the problem as described. Okay, and it wasn't until Bill got in front of Dr. Bob and talked in the alcoholic language that we have, the language of the heart, and described to him the problem as Silkworth had laid it out to him. And again, you have this catalyst of equal parts problem and solution. And what is described in our foreword to the second edition is that it says that He was able to, oh, you know what? It's an open book test. I don't need to. I don't need to fucking guess shit. Yeah, XVI. And bottom paragraph says this physician had repeatedly tried spiritual means to resolve his alcoholic dilemma but had failed. But when the broker gave him Dr. Silkworth's description of alcoholism and its hopelessness, the physician began to pursue the spiritual malady. That's what I had a Freudian slip too. The spiritual remedy for his malady with a willingness he had never before been able to muster. He sobered never to drink again up to the moment of his death. It was available to him, but he didn't have the willingness. He couldn't pull it off on his own power, right? Later on, when you guys get into step 1, you're going to find out about we can't self-will a spiritual basis of life. Mm-hmm. And that something had happened in this catalyst, just like it did for Bill, with Bob, like myself, and hundreds of other people that I know, that all of a sudden there's this willingness to pursue a spiritual remedy like I never had before. Mine, I was 14 months sober when it happened to me. The book had been presented to me. I've been hanging around AA for 2.5 years, big book meetings. And I finally got to a jumping off place, and that was my moment to realize I'm willing to do this with a power that I've never had before, right? And to me, that's more about God rather than it is about me all of a sudden having extra willingness or some shit like that, you know? So, but the last thing is just, I'll just wrap it up with this, is we need to bring that to the newcomers we work with, or anybody that we work with, because I've sponsored people with 20 years that don't know shit about their own alcoholism, if they even have it at all, right? But when we talk to people, we need to talk about both sides of that catalyst to give it the best chance to happen, right? If I come up here, like I know groups that their format is when you speak, they want 45 minutes of misery. Okay, that's what they want to hear, right? And then there's others that want to, they want to give you so much spirituality up your ass for 45 minutes that you wonder if they're even alcoholic, right? I mean, I don't sanitize alcoholics. I don't even know what that is, Book talks about quickly. The book talks about don't get lost in the numbers. The numbers are important about recovery rates. They're true. Don't get lost in the numbers. Get lost in what was required to get to the number. That is, it separates in that paragraph. It talks about people that went to the fellowship and then did the program. People that went to the fellowship, didn't like it, came back, and then they did the program, and they recovered at a high rate. Okay, there's a distinction between going to the meetings and doing the program, right? They're not one and the same, and Josie covered that pretty good. And last but not least, I spent 11 years in general service. I got a bunch of internal scars, but never again. God's going to have to really show me to do that again. I know you folks that perhaps have AA meetings where you use the BBA. Don't let anybody ever tell you you can't do that, okay? If you want I got a whole kit, because I've helped other groups do this, to shove it up their central office's ass. With principles right out of our traditions and concepts and central office guidelines from our GSO that we all voted on as a collective conscience of AA. But when you take these things on in your own group at a group level, and you keep going down the inverted pyramid, just keep this in mind at the bottom of the 4th to the 3rd edition. And this really grabbed me at a time where I didn't know where I was going. I didn't even know if I was staying as an AA or not. In spite of the great increase in the size and the span of the fellowship, at its core, it remains simple and personal. Each day, somewhere in the world, recovery begins when one alcoholic talks with another alcoholic, sharing experience, strength, and hope. That's what we're doing here. Don't get caught up in all the drama of what's going on with this and what's going on with that, why they're picking on this or what. At its core, AA is simple and personal. We have a book which says this is the Aaa Recovery Program. We can invite a God in. You have an alcoholic in front of you, right? And I'm in front of the alcoholic, which is the simultaneous triangle, circle and triangle in action, right? All at one time. At our core, Alcoholics Anonymous is simple and impersonal. Don't hear me tell you don't get involved in general service, because we need big people involved in general service, okay? But just remember what this is really all about. This is really all of one alcoholic working with another alcoholic. And if we can do that collectively more and more and more and more, you know, we'll start seeing the fellowship that we really crave. So I probably went long. Apologize.
You did great.
Thank
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave. We're going to open it up for sharing now. It's open sharing for any alcoholic addicts and Al-Anon that have done the homework. It'll be 3-minute sharing. Rick, you want a time? Someone, I need a timer.
I'm timing, I'm recording.
Richard can time. 3-minute sharing. So come up and share about what you saw in your homework or what speaks to you from the homework. Do I have to call on you? Oh, Erica, you want to share? Richard's timing.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Erica. I'm an alcoholic and an addict.
Hi, Erica.
And I just want to thank Tyla and Joe and Dave for sharing. When I did my homework this weekend, it's so strange. This is the 4th time I'll be doing the work, and the last time I did it was last December. And I just had some revelations. I've been pretty reflective the last couple of days where, like Tyla, I got here, and my God-given sobriety date is November 15th, 1995, and I didn't get to BBA till I was 17 years sober. And basically, I was dying inside. And I didn't know what was wrong. And I might lose some people here, but my hair bristles when I hear this statement. I hear it a lot at meetings, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And I want to just like strangle someone when they say that, because for me, I did everything. I did service work, I did VOA for 10 years, I met every Tuesday night doing the NA step work in a park at Adams for 7 years. I took people through the work, and like Tyla, that was enough to keep me sober. I didn't put any alcohol or drugs in my body, and I did some wonderful things. I got college degrees, I was employable, but I faked it till I would make it. And for Tyla, there was a third reason that I didn't, say anything, is because it was so important for you to see me as I'm all sober. And there's one person in the room, I'm gonna break her anonymity, that knew who I was, Shakira, because I didn't know I had a spiritual malady, and so now I was trapped. I feel so free, and the best thing that I was thinking about this week all day long was that set-aside prayer, because I got here and I knew nothing. And now when it says in the book, we only know a little. And today I know a little, which is why I'm doing the work again, because today I know I have a sickened spirit, and I know that there's something I can do about it. And each time I go through the work, another layer gets peeled off. And so all those of you that are new doing the work, this is so awesome. And those of you that are redoing the work, for me, like I said, this is my 4th time. And Joe always says, how free do you want to be? I'm pretty free right now, but there are still things that keep me stuck, and I want to be able to get more freedom. I want to be able to have more will, you know, because sometimes I still go back to that living in your own self-will can hardly be a success. And every time something screws up in my life, it's always because it was my decision. So I want to use less of my decision making, which is still pretty poor, and do more of what God's plan is for me. And so doing this work, I'm going to get more answers of what your will is, not what my will is. And I'm just so blessed to be here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Megan. I'm a recovered drug addict and alcoholic. Man, this is so cool. I have a very different experience than Erica, but I just wanted to share that with you guys. So I was coming, I mean, I could relate to Joe, to all of you guys on so many levels, you know, something all of you guys said. I could totally relate to that. I would spend a lot of times in meetings on court cards, not desperate, not willing to go to any lengths, but I wanted to like get what you guys had by osmosis. This room, I went to lots of meetings and it was like, this is really what these people are excited. How are they smiling? What are they happy about? Like, this is something I'm gonna have to do now. I have a kid, so I have to stay sober. And I was so blessed that God took everything away from me. So all I had left was to do this work and to turn to God. And then I've never tried any other way of doing the work. I've only done it this way. And let me tell you, I've done it. I've just celebrated 3 years sober, and I've done the work 3 times. And it's not because I really enjoy doing all this work, but I do love the effect produced by it. It is far better than that of drugs and alcohol, or I wouldn't be sitting here today. So, you know, I haven't decided if I'm going to, I just did finish the work, but I wanted to experience a different workshop than the ones I'm familiar with and been doing. I want to continue to grow spiritually, because if I just keep doing the small things I do every day, it works, but it's almost kind of like the warnings of step 10. You know, I can't rest on my laurels. I have to keep growing. I have to keep seeking. I have to keep doing more. And it's just such an honor and a blessing to be here today. So thank you guys.
Hi, I'm Natasha, and I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and I'm super excited to be here. I'm like really excited. I was looking forward to this all week, actually. And when Tyla was sharing, I was just looking at Tyla, and I was just so grateful, and I felt so like, I don't know, I just felt amazing, and I just felt like I can't believe I'm here. And then I was like, well, why do I feel so amazing just to be in a room and like doing the steps and doing this work? And it's like because I'm free. And if you were an alcoholic, like I was, like tortured, like it's a big fucking deal. You know what I mean? It's like just to have freedom and to not be, you know, tortured in my mind, and not only just with the alcohol, not just with like not picking up a drink, but just like that prison of my mind that was just never free, and that was just always in pain and driven by fear. And to have freedom from that, it's, I don't know. I don't want to say it's priceless, because then it's like that commercial, American Express or whatever. I don't know. Whatever. Capital One? No, that's in your wallet. Okay. Not in my wallet, but anyways. Okay, that's another story. And then someone else was talking about, the circle and triangle. And then also when Tyla was sharing, I was like, she was like going over like the things that, you know, we should do when we're in the circle and triangle or something like that. I was like, oh yeah, I do that. And I was like, wow, I'm a really good sponsee. I'm a really good AA member. And then I was like, well, actually, I have to be. Like, I don't have a fucking choice. Like, I mean, I have a choice. My choice is to, like, live in some insanity and some chaos, or it's to live, like, super free and not causing other people pain and myself pain. And, I mean, I've lived on both, you know, within the last year. But, I mean, right now, yeah. Anyways, I fell a little short. But, so I was in a lot of pain. And so now I'm, like, really like working the program as if my life depends upon it, and it's so much easier when I do that. But I mean, like I said, I do fall off balance. It's not like I'm, you know, perfection, but I you know, I really want to do this because I have to. And there was something else that was really good that I heard. Well, you guys were here, you heard it. I don't need to repeat it. So anyways, thank you.
Hi, my name's Kim, and I'm a recovered compulsive overeater and alcoholic. And in going through and writing, it was the first time that I actually I really felt that I acknowledged the miracle that I'm almost 40 years recovered from compulsive overeating and many years in AA. And so, and even with that, I still have pain, and that's why I'm here. Because I know that my spiritual malady runs pretty deep, and that I need this program to be free. And I want that freedom. And for me, I'm looking at the codependency that has plagued me. You know, I grew up an expert codependent. I had an alcoholic mom, and I was made responsible as a child for helping run the home because she couldn't. And so it became, taking care of other people and so forth and so on. But it's not working for me now. So when people say, how's that working for you?
How's it working?
It ain't. Mm-hmm. And it's been painful. And one thing I wanted to share is I really appreciated, Dave, when you talked about, and Joe, the importance of working or reaching out, one addict to another, one alcoholic to another, one codependent to another. And I had the opportunity last night, it was totally a God thing, and I reached out to a fellow member who just happened to be up late, and we did prayer together, we did, kind of listening, suggesting, confronting, all that stuff. I was so grateful. It helped me immensely. One conversation with another recovering alcoholic. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Richard. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Richard.
And I'm also a little bit of a crystal meth addict, too. Thank you guys very much. Joe, I got to share something a little bit. Last week, after last week's workshop, I pulled Joe aside, and I've known Joe for a very long time. And I told him, I said, I really respect your recovery. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I'm sharing that with you now, and I'm sorry, Joe, I didn't mean to embarrass you if I have, but Greg, the reason why I'm sharing that is because I'm going to share a little bit about my experience, but I'm also going to share what I've witnessed. In the book, it on page 25, it says to us, but we saw that it really worked in others. And I can tell you that I have known Joe my entire sobriety, and I have seen it work in him. And I've experienced it work with me. And I love this book. Before I did BBA, there were parts of the big book I didn't read because I didn't need to.
Like the agnostics.
We agnostics, yes, you remember that.
Yes,
I shared, because when I came in here, I believed in God, and so we agnostics, that does not apply to me. One of my favorite chapters today. And I'll share about that when we get to we agnostics.
Dave's gonna do it.
Oh, sweet, nice. But here's something else I want to say too. And I love how you, Dave, thank you very much for sharing. I love how you describe this as a tool. And that to not only just use this tool, but also experience the book in the way that God shows you. And, when you were talking about the musts, Tyla looks at me and I went, orange.
Orange.
Because that's my color code in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous for musts. Recovered. 17 times it tells us in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that we can be recovered. And I love that. And spiritual principles, purple. Promises, green. And here's how I got to that. Because I did this work, and as I was going through, I was being shown more and more and more stuff. You go through my book, and there's more than just what was in here. There's been, I write my experience in there. I write when God shows me something. 15, 14. But my point is thank you very much, because this is an awesome tool, and God showed me how to grow beyond this, and I hope you will too. So thanks.
Good evening, family. My name is Shakira, and I'm grateful to know I am a recovered dopeaholic. I want to thank you, Tyler, Dave, Joe C. This approach has literally saved my life. I met Tyler about 4 years ago when she spoke at a conference, and I had about 22 years clean at that time. But there was this gaping hole inside of me. I was not realizing the promises of the program. And she started talking about this internal condition, this spiritual malady. Now listen to what I'm saying. I'm 22 years clean and sober, but I have no idea what this is about, but it seems to make a lot of sense to me. So I began to stalk this woman, and a year ago I started coming to BBA. By the way, I come on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. This is good stuff, and the more that I come, the more I realize that I'm a woman with issues on top of issues, okay? And it's through this process that I'm able to get gut level honest with myself about that internal condition that's fueling all these other issues that I have, So this approach is giving me a profound sense of hope that I can realize the promises in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm kind of like a studious type, and I always read the big book for information so that I can impress upon you the knowledge that I have and how I can present that to you. Now I'm beginning to have an experience with the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that cat Bill W. and Dr. Bob, they're no longer these Caucasian guys that lived way back in the 1930s. They are me and I am them, I look forward to coming here on Sundays with great anticipations. I wake up on Sunday morning, BBA today. And I feel that way on Tuesdays, and I feel that way on Wednesdays. And I came here with about 10 women that I have been sponsoring with this big hole in my gut. And guess what I did to compensate? They come on Tuesdays now. They come to BBA. And they're getting the kind of freedom that I'm beginning to experience here. This is absolutely miraculous for me. That I'm beginning to truly recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Thank you.
My name is Corey, and I'm an alcoholic. Corey. And I like meth a lot. Thank you, Tyla, for having this meeting, and Joe for having this meeting, and thank you for your lead. I've had a lot of relapse in my history. And, I used to hear at the meetings, or the NA meetings especially, just don't use, keep coming back, just don't use. And I just felt so guilty that, some of those nights I'd be texting my dealer at the meeting because I knew after that meeting, I was definitely going to use. And I just thought, there was definitely something wrong with me because, I'm doing what they say. I'm going to meetings. I would show up to fellowship. And there I was again, back at day one. And it kept happening again and again. But I remember sitting down with my sponsor, and when we ran over the triangle, there was a time when I had 3 years, and he was just like, okay, let's talk about the triangle, and let's talk about what you weren't doing. And it really brought it to my face. I could see for my own self what I was not doing. And, I could make the meetings, I could make the fellowship, but I never really did the work. I never had the recovery piece. And so that's what's important to me this time, is just really doing the work. And maybe that means that I won't go to, 9 meetings a week anymore. I might go to 5, but because I need to take that personal time for myself to see myself and that's the difference this time as well. I can see myself in the book. I can see how I react to certain situations as, Bill did. And that means the world to me because finally this piece of information, all this old English crap is coming alive for me. It's coming alive for me. I see myself. I did the same shit. And so the beautiful thing about the triangle is that, today I can see a gauge of where I am in this process, and it makes a huge difference. Thanks for letting me share.
Well, hi, my name is Reagan. I'm an alcoholic, and it's just really the beginning for me. Thank you so much, Tyla. I just want to say I couldn't wait to be here today, and I got to tell you that I injured my back, and I couldn't get out of bed, but I wanted to be here because there's something happening here that is really exciting and wonderful for me. Talking about the triangle, I was like doing my morning meditation the other day, and so these thoughts came to me about the triangle, which I had never done before. I wasn't working a program. I'd been in AA for 4.25 years, but I wasn't fulfilling these 3 aspects of an holistic recovery. I didn't know that. And so I'm looking at these words and I'm thinking, okay, the word service really bores me. It's like, what does that mean? It's like cleaning ashtrays, assembling chairs. And so then the thought came to me, well, what's another word that I could put there? I thought, love. Love would compel me to wash those freaking ashtrays, rearrange the chairs, love. So that made sense to me. And then I looked at unity, and I thought, okay, well, all right, unity. What is unity? And I thought of the word oneness, because it says, do you have a group that you are committed to, that you're one with? And all my life, as whoever it was, I always felt like I was on the outside looking in. I was looking at your lives, alone, isolated, by myself. And I thought, I've been looking for oneness all my life and didn't know how to find it. So there we have oneness. And then recovery, I thought, okay, recovery is, are you actively working the 12 steps? And I thought, well, another word for recovery, I would put wholeness. Because these 12 steps are leading me to that sense of wholeness that I've been seeking all my life but missing. And so I realized in that moment that everything I've been looking for in life is right here with all of you. So I just want to say thank you so much for this great opportunity.
Hi, Tyla, alcoholic addict. We're going to pass the baskets. Please help us continue to bring Starbucks coffee to you. I want to turn... Okay. Couple things. If you're willing to take a commitment at this meeting, please stay after. If you are part of the workshop, we ask that you stay during the sharing. If you want to be part of this, that you don't decide that you just want to hear Joe and I and Dave share when Dave is here and just get up and leave. Because this is part of the fellowship and unity of this workshop. Because you get to have an experience at home transcribing between you and God, between you and your step partner, coming here, hearing us, and being part of this group and hearing the sharing of the group. And if you have a problem with that, you can see me after the meeting. And because it's important, right, Tom, that we're part of this, that you're just not coming here again for yourself to be selfish and self-centered. It's all about me. I got to go to this, whatever. So be part of the group. And let's see what else. Homework is the doctor's opinion. You just had Tyla's opinion. Now you got to work on the doctor's opinion. I hope that you'll all take a look online and take a look at Dr. Silkworth. And because I'm going to bring a picture of him next week, just take a look at him and think about when you're reading the doctor's opinion that man could have sat opposite you in a hospital and carried the message to you, because he is amazing to me, and I'll talk about him next week, what he looks like and who he is and what people said about him. I like to look at him and think, what was it like? Because there's a lot of history, if you look it up on Google the history with this, there's a lot of history about what people said that sat opposite this man, and you learn a lot about who he was, listening to what they said. He worked with, 50,000 in his lifetime. That's a lot of people. Okay, Anyone that doesn't have a step partner or needs a step partner, please stay after. We have passed the baskets. Are the baskets passed, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go out with a serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. If anyone have any questions, you can ask me anything. You can ask Joe anything. That's consent. When I work with someone, they got to have consent. No, it's the truth. So if you have anything about the group you want to ask, yeah, Kim.
So with respect to the homework and this new step guide, is there any difference, changes, from...
One of the things, that's such a good question Kim asked about, are there any changes in the homework? One of the things I suggest is that you read, if you're doing the doctor's opinion, this is your homework this week, that you read the doctor's opinion with your step partner, because we're not going to read it all here. My hope is that I read parts of it and I bring it alive in my experience for you, but that you read it with your partner and answer the questions. Okay? Thank you. We'll see you next week.
I'll be back over there.
We're descending upon you. We want to do it today, I can't, but we want to volunteer. Starting next week. Does that work? Okay. We'll bring snacks.